Are the 49ers in some way to blame for all of these injuries? And I have a hard time even spitting the sentence out because it's football, and I just think it's incredibly difficult to come down the road of a training staff or a head coach because somebody tore an ACL. George Kittle spoke yesterday about the turf, and I think he's got a really interesting point, although his point wasn't the straight, like, we shouldn't be playing on turf. His point was, whatever we're going to play on, can we just play on that? Can it just be the same every week so that we can get used to it? He sort of likened it to the NBA. He's like, the NBA doesn't like play on rubber in Boston and then on hardwood in Minnesota. So therefore, they can figure it out. Not a perfect comp. NBA plays inside arenas, but you get what he's saying, and I think there's a point to be had there. But all of these injuries, we talked about it a few weeks ago, in the Kyle Shanahan era, the 49ers have been in the top third of the league in terms of man games lost to injury every single year, and they've been in the top 3 for the last couple of years. And here we go again. The answer for me is I don't know. I don't know how anybody could know, but there's something going on here because the 49ers get a win that calms everybody down. It should make you feel really good as a fan that this team's going to have a great chance to win the division this year. They really should have a great chance to win the division. But you can't run a victory lap because Mosley is done for the year. Yeah. Got no idea what's going on with Bosa. Mitch Wisnowski's out here kicking extra points.
Kind of.
And we already had a laundry list before we got here. Trent Williams, Kinlaw, Eric Armstead, Jimmy Ward. I mean, my gosh, Elijah Mitchell. We could go on and on. Something's going on here, but I have no idea what it is.
So why? You have to ask yourself why. And in terms of injuries like a torn ACL, I don't know if you can blame a training staff or a strength and conditioning staff, but the Nick Bosa one is the one that really has my eyebrows raised because he came into the game yesterday feeling a little bit tight in pregame, yet you put him out there anyway, and then now he gets hurt. And those are the soft tissue injuries where it feels like those are preventable. And I know that when you're on a turf field, injuries can come up more often than not, but the Niners play on grass a majority of their games. And if you look at, the few times they play on turf, it always seems like they do get these major injuries when they go and they play on turf. But the groin one with Nick Bosa, that's one to me that has my eyebrows raised because that to me is either not stretching, not preparing enough. Was it something that was bothering him before the game?
Yeah.
Should he have been held out? Why are we having situations where they continue to lead the league in injuries?
Well, and they keep calling it a tight groin, not a pulled groin, not a strained groin.
Right,
so that's good, I guess. That was the post-game verbiage that was used. It was a tight groin. That was George Kittle's injury, although it was much worse a few weeks ago. So I don't know where this whole thing is going to go next. Again, I have the hardest time in football blaming anyone for an injury. To a degree, we went through this a few weeks ago, even when it comes to play calling and Trey Lance. Kyle Juszczyk comes out, calls this a freak injury. I have a hard time in the game of football saying this is your fault, and that's your fault that someone got hurt. But why are the 49ers leading the damn pack every year?
Year after year. So you don't want to assign blame, but at the same time, if you don't look at the cause for all these injuries, then you're just dooming yourself rather to have this repeat year after year after year because the Niners don't play on turf at home. So it's not a case of like the New York Giants. And I showed you this a couple weeks ago, the most injury-riddled teams over the last 20 years. 5 of them are the Jets and or the Giants, and that's based on the field that they play on is one of the worst. But to George Kittle's point, he's right, because if you look up and down the league, every turf field that's artificial, they're all different. Like Dallas plays on Hellas Matrix turf, and the field turf Revolution in New Orleans, and field turf in Charlotte, and field turf classic in Detroit. These are all different kind of field turf core in New England. And by the way, New England, you play outside. Why do you have turf? That's a cop-out.
I mean,
Get some
because
grass.
somebody wanted to save some money.
Right.
But it's wild because, again, all we need to change this conversation, I believe, obviously you can't do anything in the middle of a season, but could there be a year somewhere along the road where in the offseason there is a league-wide mandate, you got to change this.
Grass.
And we've got to figure out a way technologically to change this, and there are a few things that could lead to it. One of them, for instance, is, hey, Panthers, so you're willing to pay Matt Rule $42 million to not coach. How much would it cost in your outdoor stadium in a non-terrible weather environment? How much would it cost to just normalize your field? Just normalize your field. It will cost less, by the way, than what it costs to pay Matt Rule to go away. And then the other side is, look, we got games where Skylar Thompson now is playing quarterback. If you're going to, and you mentioned this last week, if you're going to act like concussions are a big deal, we got guys running around in training camp looking like the Michelin Man with these helmets that they're sticking on their head. They make them all look like aliens, and they're running around out there because, boy, we care about concussions. If you cared about concussions, you'd get rid of the turf, because the turf is probably to blame for at least half of these. We think of concussions as helmet to helmet. No, it's throwing someone to the ground, and it's helmet to turf that causes the majority of these concussions.
We saw it yesterday from Chris Olave of
that one was
a
ugly.
bad one, New Orleans Saints, where
all he was doing was catching and going to the ground.
Exactly, but the whip action of the head hitting the turf, you're absolutely right. English Premier League soccer, I talk about it a lot. They've got 20 teams, all 20 of them play on grass, and you can't tell me that the weather factors in England are any better than what we have here in the States. They have rain there, and yes, if you look at situations like Buffalo and New York and Philadelphia, you might get some snow. Green Bay, you'll get snow. Chicago, a lot of rain. Just make it grass. But the NFL, they don't care about their players at all.
No, completely.
They care more about a coach being able to make $40 million than they do a guy who, tears his ACL on a fake field.